So, Michael, it's always a difficult thing when someone has to report abuse.
Right.
And it's always difficult for us to field those calls, but we know it's our responsibility.
Yes.
And it's what we're called to do. We're not called to run away from those times that we suspect someone is being abused, or God forbid, we walk into an abusive situation, meaning that we walk into a room and we see abuse happening, whether that's sexually, whether that's physically, whether that's verbally. But it's our responsibility, and it's your responsibility as a volunteer or an employee of the church that you're able to report that immediately to Michael or myself,
Right.
that abuse is happening. And so we just want to take this time right now with you to practically show you what the structure has been put into place for the situations that you have to report a suspected abuse or report a firsthand witness of abuse taking place. But before we do that, I just want to recall for you in the second video that you watched from Foursquare Church about the Ephesians 6:12 principle, and I highlight a little bit of this in the first video from Psalm 144, that we are here to preserve God's purpose on an individual life. And know that, how do we do that? Well, we've given you some tools. Even in your child abuse prevention seminar manual, we have listed for you there some signs of abuse, signs of neglect. So please avail yourself to those lists so that you can become familiar with how to look out for signs of abuse and how to do your job of reporting those times where you feel like abuse is happening. So it's very important to us to train you to know how to look out for those things. So we've included those lists for you. So now we want to be able to go into, Michael, let's say they have to report abuse. Like I referred to, it's a suspected situation, or maybe it's an actual, they witnessed this taking place. But before you begin with just walking us through for the scenario of suspected abuse, I want you to be aware that this isn't just Michael and I's responsibility to take what you're sharing, the abusive situation, but we have what we call a CAPS committee. And on that CAPS committee, we have our senior elder that oversees the whole committee. But also on that committee, we have trustees, we have deacons and deaconesses, we have our executive pastor, Pastor Derek Prezano, that serves on that board, and also Michael and I, representing Youth and Children's Ministry, overseeing those ministries. We're on that committee as well. So this isn't something that is just us making decisions in a vacuum. Your only responsibility when it comes to abuse and protecting God's call on the life of a child is for you to make us aware of abusive situations immediately. The suspected abuse as well as the witness of abuse. You firsthand seeing abuse happen. You have to make us aware of those things immediately. And we're going to tell you how that's to be done, because both situations are completely different, okay? The initial response that you give us is completely different from a suspected abuse and a eyewitness account of abuse happening. But I want to stress it's a very important thing for me to stress to you right now, that your role is to report. Make us aware. Even if you're not sure, you have to make us aware. And then it becomes our burden and our responsibility to do what we need to do, to research that, bringing it to the committee that's chaired by our senior elder, and then the committee is involved to be able to say, okay, what's the abusive situation, what's our protocol, what do we have in place to navigate through that and do the investigation of it, because now we're have that burden. You don't. You've relieved that burden, so it's very important that we understand this process.
Right, and also, some of you taking this training right now might be a state-mandated reporter or be in a position where you are required by your organization or the state or government to report signs of abuse. Our training in no way takes away from that. In fact, it's written here, the number one thing in our reporting process, number one on your training manual will say, no one with a legal duty to report information to a government agency, whether by virtue of a designated occupation or otherwise, shall be prohibited or hindered from so reporting. If you feel obligated and you are a mandated reporter to report what you see, you are allowed to do that. We in no way hinder you from doing so. We just request that you would also allow us to know what it is that you're seeing happening in our church and in our spheres of influence of volunteers and people who come to our church. We want to make sure that we're aware of it so that we can handle it as a church.
Because, Michael, there's times that if you report an abusive situation, you don't know how many other people have reported abuse
Right.
or who hasn't reported abuse, but we have documents and files of these cases, so we're able to present this to the leadership at large, remember, all the people that serve on the committee, and we're able to navigate that. There's been times, Michael, that we've had to call CPS.
Right.
We've had to make those phone calls. So we're never avoiding calling CPS. We're never avoiding getting the authorities involved that are trained professionals to deal with abusive situations.
Right.
But here's what we're saying. If you're required to report to CPS, please do so. Otherwise, we're asking, please trust the process. We've spent literally years developing our policy here at Smithtown Gospel Tabernacle for child abuse. And we have things in place in order to lead us and guide us. So now we want to begin, Michael, if you'll just lead us through so now I suspect, I didn't see it happen, but I've seen signs from a child that they've been abused or on a child that they've been abused, or someone told me, just so you know, I think this child's being abused by a parent or by, God forbid, someone else in the church. So how do they handle that? What are the steps?
Right, so for our suspected track reporting, we have a fast track and a suspected track. If you don't see anything happen and you're not the first-hand viewer of any kind of situation, you're just suspecting, you're seeing signs of neglect in a child or signs of abuse, or you hear from somebody that there's signs of abuse or neglect, or you hear that there's something going on, but you yourself are not sure, this is how you report. This is the reporting process here at Smithtown Gospel Tabernacle. And I'm going to refer you to your volunteer training manual. And we're going to read through section 2 right now. And this is what it says. Reports of actual or suspected abuse and threat of abuse or other unusual behavior will be made immediately to the youth pastor or children's ministry director, who will follow these steps. So what that means is anything you suspect comes immediately to either Pastor Mike or myself's attention. You cannot try and deal with this on your own or hope that it'll get better. Anytime you hear or suspect anything, come immediately to the leaders involved, and then we'll take these steps.
And so if it pertains to a teenager, if possible, let me know about it as a youth pastor. If it pertains to a child, let Michael know about it. But listen, if one of us are not available for some reason, then let one of us know.
Exactly.
Because we'll always communicate. We always communicate with each other about ministry, and it's specifically about abusive situations.
Correct.
That we want to know what's happening in the lives of our children here.
That's right. All right, so let's continue now in section 2 of our reporting, Smithtown Gospel Tabernacle's reporting process in your training manual. 2.A says, if the child's health and or safety is under immediate threat, the youth pastor or children's ministry director will contact appropriate authorities immediately.
So just to clarify, though, they already have let us know.
Correct. You've already let us know what it is that you're suspecting. This is our responsibility now. We're just making you aware of what we would do.
So
in
that
this
was your
situation.
step.
That was it.
That was it. You made us aware that you suspect child abuse is taking place. Now, we have a process that we're going through, and that's what Michael is reading to you now, is now this is how we handle the abusive situation. And that includes incident reports that we meet, and we meet with those that have been abused. We meet with those that have claimed abuse has happened, and we get details on that. We file that, we bring it to the committee. But now he's walking us through what it is that we do here as our process.
And let me reemphasize what Pastor Mike already said. There are a lot of people who suspect or think that there's something suspicious. They don't know if they're quite suspecting it yet. You got to let us know. Don't keep that to yourself. There's a lot of times you're like, I don't know if that's a big enough issue to bring up. Bring it up. We'll handle it appropriately. We'll make sure that we go through the right avenues to make sure that it's dealt with appropriately, and your confidentiality will be protected in that situation. But we need to know what you're suspecting so that we're aware of it, because we can't be everywhere.
There's nothing too small. You're not going to bother us. You're not going to burden us. But more importantly, I don't want you to be afraid of what happens if I do this, who's going to get in trouble. Nobody's going to get in trouble. We have the burden to now take the information and say, okay, God, we have counsel around us. We have the wisdom of those that are on this committee to be able to say, okay, we need to make sure that this child is safe and that they're not being abused. So you got to take out every subjective feeling. The objective response is report. If in doubt, report.
That's right.
If you know for sure, report.
Right.
Both cases, okay?
That's right. All right. Now, point B. In all situations, the youth pastor or children's ministry director will call the chairman of the Child and Youth Protection Committee and the senior pastor. Point C. In all situations, the youth pastor or children's ministry director will complete an incident report form in its entirety. And point D. After internal counsel and reporting processes are completed, the committee will assist the youth pastor or children's ministry director in determining whether a governmental reporting requirement has been triggered, and if so, how to comply appropriately. And E, direct any contact by the press or request for communication with the press to youth or children's ministry director who will involve the chairman of the committee. And again, I want to remind you, Section 2 here is for suspected abuse. If, when you report it, we discover that something is going on, then we'll take the necessary steps. And if it ever gets out of control and there's press and people want to know more information, continue to do what you did at the beginning of this process and pass that off to your leadership and allow us to handle that.
You literally have no responsibility once you report suspected abuse. Literally. And let me just emphasize something. There's been too many horror stories of people not revealing information that they know that has caused the situation to be more troublesome and more legal, if I can use that word, of outside agencies coming into churches because people knew about things and they didn't report them.
Right.
Whether that was suspicion or whether that you witnessed it and you were afraid of what to do or you didn't follow the right steps. But we as a church, we're telling you from leadership, follow these steps and God's going to use the process to preserve the life of a child and for justice to be served. We're here to minister to all parties involved. We're not just here to say, okay, this or that. We're here to say, God, let your will be done in these horrible situations. Turn what was meant for evil for your glory. Amen. But you have to follow the process. If you stumble in the process, in the reporting process of this, then you cause the whole structure of what we put into place to be thwarted. We're not able to truly preserve the life of that child's call of God.
Now, Pastor Mike, what if we or they walk into a situation where you see the act of child abuse, whether it be physical, sexual, or even extremely verbal in the process? Yeah. It's happening right in front of you. How do we now take care of that?
God forbid we've yet, God forbid. Let me just clarify something. This is called our fast track process. Know that terminology. Because when you use fast track process, all of those that are involved on the committee understand that language, okay? Fast track process. All of our leaders need to know fast. Can you say it with me? Can they say it? Fast track process. This is not suspected. This is a fast track. This is, like Michael has said, you witnessed the act. We're not talking about a parent correcting their child in a healthy way. Raising my children, I had to give them a spanking. Raising my children, I've had to correct them with verbal words. So I believe that we all have spiritual discernment to understand when there's a healthy corrective situation and when there's an abusive corrective situation. But once again, if you're in doubt, you're going to report it. Right. Even in a fast track situation, we want you to report it. Never leave anything in doubt. So if you walk into a room and you see an adult or a teenager abusing somebody or a child abusing somebody and you're not sure what's happening, but you just know that you feel abuse is happening, then you're witnessing directly. So you're going to follow what we're calling the fast track process. So here's the fast track process. And this, once again, is included in your training manual with the title being Smithtown Gospels Tabernacle Reporting Process. But this is section 3. Okay? So point 3 is this. If a sexual act or any form of maltreatment is observed in progress, a fast track reporting process is initiated. So now what do? A, you ensure the child's safety. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean that we use our weapon if we're legal to carry a weapon. It doesn't mean that Michael can probably take me at any moment, but just because Michael has the strength and he has the ability to feel like he can ensure the child's safety, that's not the case. Because many times that is just going to elevate the situation, and God forbid we try to ensure the child's safety and the predator takes it to another level. He can take you hostage, he can be more violent, God forbid, kill somebody. So you are not to ensure the child's safety by being physical or by being demanding. Ensuring the child's safety simply means this. You walk into a situation, the predator sees you and runs away. You take that child, secure them in a location that nobody can have access to except you. Okay? So that's the first thing. But maybe ensuring the child's safety is you walk into a room, you see it, and the predator is there, he doesn't leave or she doesn't leave, so you don't know what to do other than run out because you don't want to escalate the situation. You've just ensured the child's safety because you jumping into it and trying to get and handle it yourself, you have just not made sure the child or the teenager is safe, right?
Right. You want to make sure that if you are in any situation where a child is being abused or neglected in front of you, you want to make sure that if the person doing that runs away, you bring that child to a safe place. If that person stays with the child, you want to make sure that you allow the predator to know that you're going to alert the authorities right now, and you go and you find Pastor Mike wants you call 911 and you let them know immediately what's happening, and then the predator most times will leave. If not, you need to make sure that you're aware of what's happening. If you're run at by the predator, you got to run away. You got to keep yourself safe. By keeping yourself safe and being able to report the process, you're ensuring the protection of the child.
Yeah, so that's listed as B, right? So here's your two steps. Ensuring the child's safety, that was A. B is you call 911 immediately.
That's right.
You're not calling Michael first. You're not calling me first. You're not making anybody in the church aware that you're calling 911.
Just because you're seeing it happen.
You're seeing it happen. Now all of a sudden, all of us have been trumped. You're getting the outside authorities to be here that are trained, that are armed. They know what to do in these situations immediately. Even if there is a police officer in our church, you're not calling them right now on duty. You are calling 911. There's going to be a documentation that you call 911. There's going to be many alerts sent out to just other than the local police department. They're going to get involved, everybody that they feel that they need to be involved, to show up immediately on site to handle the situation. So please understand this. You're ensuring the child's safety, and that's securing them in a room, the very near room that you can. Get them in that room, call 911, get that authority involved, and then we move on to C. So now what do? You've done the very first steps, and that is so important. Now C, the initial reporter, which is you. You've seen the abuse happening. You're on a fast-track process. So now the initial reporter should immediately notify the program director and the youth pastor or children's ministry director. So what does that mean, program director? Well, we know that many times at our church, like on a Friday evening, we have Royal Rangers ministry happening. We have Missionettes ministry happening. We could have other ministries happening that throughout the week that there is a program director overseeing that ministry. So we don't want them to be in the dark that in just a few seconds, a few minutes, that authorities are going to come into the church and deal with the situation. So we want you to be able to know the first thing that you got to do, call 911. The second thing is, okay, now I need to make church leadership aware. That includes contacting Michael if it involves a child, contacting me if it involves a youth. If you don't know who to call, if you don't know if it's a child or a youth, or you don't know one person's contact information, which we're going to have for you at the end here, you just call one of us, and we're going to notify each other, and we're going to be there or have somebody there in leadership to make sure that that situation is under control, okay? But also notifying a program director so that they know on site, because not all the time, Michael, as we oversee many ministries, we're not always here present for everything
Correct.
that happens, but we have people underneath us that are running the programs.
Right.
So now after you've done step 3C, 3D is The youth pastor or children's ministry director is then responsible to follow the processes outlined above. Just as we've done in step 2, we're now going to follow through with everything that step 2 has said for us to do as a committee and as a church at large. The most important thing here, Michael, was just the fast track process is completely different because they're calling 911.
Right, and if you guys, again, have any questions, feel free to put them into the discussion board. We'll respond to your questions, or you can meet us here at the church, and we'll answer any questions you have in detail to make sure that you feel comfortable with both these processes. All right?
So now, Michael, they need to get a hold of us, so can you go over
Right.
that real quick? You don't have to read our information there, but just point them to section 4 there.
Right. In section 4 here of your manual, it says that it's important for you to make sure that you know how to reach us. And in a fast track situation, feel free to call either myself or Pastor Mike directly. Use our cell phone numbers. They're given to you here in your training manual. If it's a suspected situation, you're not quite sure what's going on, you think you see signs, remember our suspected reporting process, please email us. We'll get back to you the following day. But if there's any kind of fast track situation, just call us directly on our cell phones.
Yeah, and on our cell phones for this, on our cell phones, that if you have to call us because of a fast track, we're going to pick up our phone. Don't call us about something else because that you should call the church office for that.
Correct. Okay, that's point A and point B. And point C, it says if you're unsuccessful in reaching us, Pastor Mike, then you can just call me directly. If you're unsuccessful in reaching me, call him. And if you cannot reach either of us, as point D describes.
Point E.
Right. We give you Pastor Derek Presano, our executive pastor here at the church. We give you his cell phone number. Again, please don't call him until you've already tried myself or Pastor Mike to make sure that one of the pastors is notified. So
And
there's all the
I know,
there's all the
Michael, we
information
took
you
some time here.
Right.
But it was very important for us to take the time allotted to be able to explain to you what our reporting process is because
This is
a big
crucial
piece.
to the entire training and reason for why we do CAPS.
So now we'll move on to the next set of the quiz, and then they'll go forward with the next video.
Yep.